Hey nature photographers, it's Lee Hoy. I'm out here in the villages of Florida where I'm getting to visit some incredible clients who've been with me now. They'll be on 5 continents here before long when they go with me to India. The nice thing about this place is there's a lot of freshwater habitat, and I love photographing dragonflies. One of my photography mentors, who's since passed on, Greg Lasley, was phenomenal with dragonflies. A couple of my friends are some of the world's leading experts on Odonata, so John and Kendra Abbott. Look up Abbott Nature Photography if you want to see some amazing macro shots. And for me, dragonflies, the colors, the beauty, they're delicate, yet they're little voracious predators. I love photographing them, and I'll tell you, the OM system gear changed how I photograph dragonflies. I used to always use a tripod for a variety of reasons, but with the long lenses in the OM system gear, whether you're using the 150 to 400, the 100 to 400, the 150 to 600, the 300 f4, even the 40 to 150, maybe the 1.4 doubler, these lenses are perfect for photographing dragonflies. Now, I'm not talking about like just the face. Yeah, they're the 90 millimeter, the 60 millimeter might come in more handy. But the nice thing about the long lens is it's going to give us some working room. So today, what I'm going to teach you is I'm going to talk about some of my settings, equipment settings, exposure. We're going to look at some of the ways to help you capture phenomenal dragonfly images. So stay tuned.
Howdy from West Texas. I'm Lee Hoy, professional nature photographer, and this is my YouTube channel, Lee Hoy Photography. I'm an OM System Ambassador, photography workshop instructor for Wildside Nature Tours and Precision Camera and Video, and contributing author for the Journal of Wildlife Photography.
Well, let's first talk equipment for shooting dragonflies. So I've got my 150 to 400. I have the OM System FL900R flash. You'll notice I'm not using any diffusion when photographing dragonflies. Most macro photography that I do, I'm using a diffuser, but when I'm doing dragonflies, I don't feel I need one. Normally the flash is far enough away, and if there is a little bit of bright flash, I can reduce that in post-processing, so it's not an issue. I'm going to use my flash in manual mode, and we'll talk about that in a minute. When I've got the OM1 Mark II with a grip. I like a grip with the longer lenses to give me a little more balance in the setup. I'm also probably going to use my my focus limiter here, the switch. I'm probably going to put it on 1.3 to 6 meters. 6 meters is pretty long. I'm not photographing dragonflies that far out. If I wanted to, I could go into the digital focus limiter and I could set it for even shorter, but that's just going to help me acquire focus quicker. So when it comes to gear for photographing this, you want your long lens. You're going to want to set some kind of a focus limiter so it doesn't do the long hunting back and forth. Dragonflies can be pretty skinny, and we'll talk about focus here in a minute. So whatever camera body you have and a long lens and a simple flash setup are really what you want in terms of equipment. You may want a monopod, you may want a tripod. I have found that hand holding this, even at the flash sync speed of 1/250th of a second, that's no problem. It gives me an opportunity to capture nice sharp shots, and I'll be showing some of those shots throughout the video. This setup works beautifully because I have more working distance. See, the thing with dragonflies, their eyes are able to pick up incredible movement, and so it's easy to spook a dragonfly. You want to make sure that you have plenty of working room, whereas if I were trying to use a macro lens, you need a really patient dragonfly, and you'll find that every now and then, and you'll see a lot of OM System ambassadors who specialize in macro. They'll have a lot of shots of just the face, and don't fall into the trap of thinking every shot needs to be the entire body of the dragonfly. So this is my setup. I'm generally going to hand hold. I'm going to put my hand here on the lens grip, and that's going to give me the support I need. Sometimes I might move this thing out, and mine has so much junk in it I can't even hardly spin my lens collar anymore, but sometimes I'll hold it off to the side. But with the flash, I like having support underneath. I want to have a good firm grip and hand hold this. But again, if you find that your arms are getting tired, here I could always rest it as well on the rail. So I'm going to take advantage of whatever kind of support I might need to make sure I get a nice sharp shot. So that's the equipment we're going to use for dragonfly. Again, the long lens gives us more working room, and with the minimum focal distance of 4.25 feet, that's going to be plenty to fill the frame. I generally don't even need the teleconverter on unless the dragonfly is a little further away. Again, let's review. Focus limiter. I'm going to set the switch to the shortest, or I'm going to go into the camera and set the digital autofocus limiter. I need a flash in manual mode. You could try TTL. The problem is, you know, your dragonfly comprises just a little part of the scene even when you're zoomed completely in, and I just find that TTL does not work as reliably as manual flash power. So we're going to have a camera. I prefer a grip with long lenses to give me a little bit more balanced setup. So that's our gear. Next we're going to talk about some of our settings. All right guys, let's talk about exposure settings for dragonflies using a flash. So first things, let's just talk about our standard settings. With the OM1 Mark II or the OM1, you're going to have a flash sync speed of 1/250th. The M1X, I think it's 200, it might be 250th. So we're generally going to set our shutter speed to the maximum flash sync speed, okay? Second of all, we're going to be around f14 to f16 to start. And then my ISO is probably, depending on the amount of light, going to be somewhere between 400 to 800. I may have to go higher, most likely not. You know, usually when we're photographing dragonflies, we typically have a little more light. And because we're using flash, we don't necessarily need to worry about a high ISO. If we weren't shooting with flash, then yeah, we're going to need to take advantage of higher ISOs, just like we've talked about in other videos. The key is, here's what you need to understand about using flash and exposure. The shutter speed controls the amount of ambient light. The aperture controls your flash exposure. Now, I talked about shooting the flash in manual power. I am normally going to be in manual mode, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change my mode to manual. Okay. Now, right now I've got it at about 1/6 of a power. You're generally going to find yourself somewhere between maybe a 1/4 to a 1/16. If you've got a lot more light and you just want a little fill light, then maybe even as low as 1/32 of a power. This is where there's not a set standard or rule. It's going to vary. So you're going to want to be checking your exposures a little more often to make sure you've nailed your exposure. And once you get it dialed in, if the light remains constant, and the dragonflies are in fairly constant light, like this morning, we've got some nice diffused sunlight. The clouds are thicker, but they're not solid. So today's actually a really nice day for photographing dragonflies. I'm going to have nice even lighting on my background, and that's going to give me some really good shots. What I have found when you're doing flash, a lot of people get real nervous about, you know, trying to make sure that they're doing everything well. So I look at my flash, I set my zoom to 100 millimeters. That's as far as I can go with the 900, and that's going to be plenty. It's going to throw the light. And if I look at my distance scale, it says up to 24.1 feet. Well, I'm not photographing a dragonfly beyond that. So my flash is going to cover the distance required. So that means I could probably drop the manual power on there. I could probably go to 1/8, you know, or lower. If I notice that my flash exposure is a little strong, then I can stop down a little bit, or I can drop my ISO. So remember, shutter speed, if I take a picture and it's daylight like this and my background is solid black, it means I need to open up my shutter speed. I need to let in a little more light to get color. Now you may want a black background. If so, you're going to use shutter speed to create that. That's going to be the key settings. That's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to make adjustments based upon light, you know, based upon depth of field. Because even at f16, if I've got a dragonfly 4 feet away, I am not getting that body of that dragonfly sharp from the tip of the eye to the tip of the tail, unless I want to use focus stacking. So I'm going to talk about single shot photography right now. Those are going to be my settings. That's going to be my exposure. And that's what we're going to do to try to capture really nice exposed to the right images. And that's what we're going to do. Morning. And that's what we're going to do to really nail our settings. Again, we may reduce the exposure in post-processing, but we want to start capturing as much detail as possible. All right, guys, so let's talk about autofocus here with photographing dragonflies. And I'm not addressing damselflies today because there's some differences. With smaller dragonflies, you really need a macro lens, and there's enough differences. There's a lot of similarities, but I just want to focus on dragonflies because they're a little bigger, they're a little easier to track for a lot of beginning and amateur photographers. With autofocus, this is probably going to surprise you. I use bird subject detection most of the time. The eyes are big enough where it locks in. But unlike photographing birds, I don't typically use all or the large autofocus box. I tend to use the small, not the single's too small. I want the small autofocus box, okay? And what I'm gonna do is using my joystick, once I locate my dragonfly and I position it where I want it in the frame, I am going to move the box to the eyes on where I want them in my image. You know, even with subject detection, I'm still going to move that box just because I don't want it grabbing a wingtip or other things. Now, dragonflies are very thin, and sometimes it can be tough trying to grab focus initially on a dragonfly. Here's the key. If my dragonfly is 5 feet away, I'm going to point down and initially acquire focus on a plant, on the water, on a stump, on something that's close to the same distance. That way, when I move my lens to where the dragonfly is, it's already more in focus, and that's going to help the subject detection lock onto those eyes. Okay, this is going to work better for dragonflies that are sideways, slightly facing you. It will still grab a dragonfly facing away, but if you find that it's struggling in that condition, just turn off subject detection. For me, on my OM1, my OM1 Mark II, I've programmed exposure compensation dial for subject detection to turn it on and off. If I turn it off, then we're just doing autofocus the old-fashioned way, and that is I'm just focusing like we used to, just moving the point right to where I want it. Why do I move the point? Well, because subject detection wasn't designed for insects, but it works really well on those big eyes. Occasionally, depending on the lighting, when they look around, it may lose it. Just let off of autofocus, wait till their eyes reposition. But you're going to be surprised how well subject detection works. Again, using an autofocus limiter, if I do lose focus, then it's not going all the way to infinity and I've got to find something close. You know, it's only going to go a little ways and come back. It's going to be much quicker to acquire focus. Another thing is, like I said, if you struggle with locating a dragonfly zoomed out, I always do it at you know, zoomed out as far as I can. Then zoom, what I say is, you know, go back to like 150 or 100 millimeters, find the subject, and then rack the zoom till you get the framing you want. I like to shoot dragonflies pretty tight so you can see the detail. I mean, every now and then you'll have a real beautiful setting or background and you're going to be zoomed out to give some of that environmental effect. So you're going to want to make sure that you're using your focus to help you capture the best images. All right, let's talk about composition. Now, as we're walking along the boardwalk, there's a blue dasher, and he's too far away for you to be able to see with this focal length on the DJI Pocket Osmo, but it's facing me. So as I'm walking around a boardwalk, I'm looking for dragonflies that are perched up higher and that don't have vegetation or something directly behind them. Now, there's two blue dashers here. One is down low, and there's a green blade of grass. I mean, it can't be that thin, but it is directly behind it, and I want that head-on shot. So if I shoot the lower one, I may have to move around, but that piece of grass is probably going to be in the image. The other one is higher, and man, I've got dark water behind it. He's a little further away, but with this focal length, I'm going to be okay, and he's still facing me. So when we go to capture an image, when we think about composition, if a dragonfly is straight down below you, most of the time I'm not going to shoot that. I want to be lower. Well, here I'm on a boardwalk and the gaps in the wood are too tight. I can't shoot through that. So I'm looking for dragonflies that are perched higher to give me a nice clean background, that bokeh that we're often looking for. So when I see this guy, I'm not just going to stand exactly where I am and shoot. I'm going to move around till I have that nice dark water, okay? I'm going to go ahead and acquire focus. And what I want to do is I really want to look for, are there any obstacles? Oh, he flew, no, there he is. So let me find him here. And so I'm focusing on a blade of grass. I'm trying to figure out where that grass is. He's a little further away. Yep, there he is. Okay, so then if I'm in a situation like this where for some reason I just can't seem to grab the right blade of grass, you'll notice my fingertip here is on the manual focus ring. So I always have AF plus MF turned on. And I just keep, oh, I'm getting a blade of grass directly behind it. That's what I'm doing. I am off. So I have the focus indicator turned on. That's where you have the mountaintop and the flower. So you can really see if which direction you're going. Now I've got the dragonfly perfectly in focus. I've acquired it with the tracking. It's locked right on the eyes. And so I'm going to take a few shots. I'm going to real quick, I'm going to check my histogram. And I am looking good. It's not quite to the right. And oftentimes when you're photographing dragonflies, you'll find that you can blow out the red or the green or the blue channel depending on their eyes. So sometimes we're paying attention more to our specific RGB channels in the histogram than we are to the general one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to I don't want to up my flash power because it's pretty good. I think what I'm going to do is, I want a little more ambient light, but I'm going to stop down a little bit just to give me a little darker background. Oh, let's talk about drive mode. I don't use silent drive modes for dragonflies. I'm not worried about spooking them with sound, right? And because I'm using flash, if you go with a silent or anti-shock drive mode, it's going to limit your flash sync speed to like 100 or 50, depending on which drive mode. I don't want a shutter speed that low usually. If you'll see my elbow here is resting on this boardwalk. Honestly, I could probably shoot it at 100 at 1/100th and be okay. So I made some exposure adjustments. Let me grab a couple more here. And I'm going to take a look. Yeah, looking pretty good. Just check my focus a little bit. Yeah, overall, I think I like that shot. So what I'll do is I might move around. Now I'm going to find a green background. And if I've got a cooperative dragonfly, you'll notice I'm not just taking one or two. Why? Because with a dragonfly, our focus, if it's off just a little bit, I want the one that's going to have the legs in sharp focus, the head, and a little bit of the thorax, or maybe even the abdomen. So let me check my exposure here. Yeah, looking pretty good. I may bump my ISO just up to 800. And again, I'm at this angle to put a green, I'm trying to put a green lily pad right behind it. The other background was a little more brown. And the way this guy's looking, I'm putting him in the upper third. There's no other plants in this view, so this is going to be kind of a nice distant view, and I'll show you that image here in just a sec. So composition, if we're at water level or if we're at ground level, you can kneel down. We want to get that dragonfly as much at eye level. I'll shoot down occasionally, but again, most time it's going to be a more powerful image. Here's what I like to think of. Think about taking people into the dragonfly's world, not your world. Our world is normally looking straight down, and that tends to get boring. A little lower than the subject, eye level, makes it a more powerful image. We want to take people into what it's like to be this dragonfly, not what they expect. So your positioning, if I'm on a boardwalk today, but if I'm doing macro, I always have on knee pads at a minimum to protect my pants, to keep from ruining them with, stains, but also to protect my knees, whether it's rocky, muddy, whatever it might be. And again, the key on knee pads, go to the masonry section in your home improvement store. Don't go to the gardening. They're much tougher, more durable in the masonry section. Well, guys, I think that's probably some of my best tips and tricks for photographing dragonflies with the OM system. If you like to photograph dragonflies, let me hear some of your tips and tricks down in the comment. Maybe you'll come and join me on one of my macro workshops, and I'd love to see you in the field. But take this out there, go see what it's like. Tag me in some of your images so I can see how it's going. Thanks for joining me today. Go out and get some great shots.